This is the list of everything I played in 2024. Take a moment to bask, there will be spoilers shown for the games highlighted in green, so if you're planning on playing one of these and haven't yet, I would advise you to ball out and watch this video anyway. Even though it's at the bottom of this list, Unpacking is really good. You'll find that if I don't enjoy a game, there's no way that I'm going to get even close to finishing it, so this is the game I enjoyed the least out of a very good bunch. Unpacking is a really fun and satisfying little gem that many of you will have heard about before, and if you haven't, I'm sorry, but the game is too difficult for me to explain. It's a great turn your brain off game, good to relax with in the evenings against the beautiful, nostalgic OST, while being absorbed with the pretty impressive sound design of each object within the dynamics of each room. It's really nice to see the progression whoever is living in these places goes through with each move as they grow up, graduate, find a partner and settle down. Look, I even felt quite melancholic towards the end, which is quite impressive for a game that conveys a story with no text at all. The problem I have with it is that I'm me and could only get through one level at a time without getting bored. It is really fun in the moment, like I don't think about quitting the level midway through it, but especially as the houses you're decking out get bigger, I felt exhausted after each level, often leaving the next one for when I had the mental capacity to do it. I need to stress that it's not an objectively boring game at all. My brain can just only handle small doses at a time. I did get the platinum though, which does involve flushing all the toilets. If only it had one more toilet though, because then it would have been above. Tem Tem actually really surprised me. I'd been meaning to play it for quite a while and picked it up with one of my friends. Apart from being a new Pokemon-like adventure, the draw of this game for me is how you could play it in co-op. For some reason, it's actually like really functional. You can walk around together seamlessly, enter battles together, progress the story together, and battle each other all the way through. I do love that the types aren't just copy and pasted either. I don't know who came up with the crystal type or why it's effective against the mental type, because it feels like some joke from 2036 that we haven't discovered yet. But it's great. It refreshes battles so much, and with a new dex to uncover, another story you don't care about at all, and a friend by your side, oh, it's perfect. Grab someone and play this, trust me. Hey, it might possibly be a bit controversial having this Game of the Year contender so low, but I feel like Helldivers 2 didn't connect with me in the same way that it did for loads of others this year. The story of this game's success is just really inspiring though. In a year with so many games that have had wild breakout successes on launch, like Palworld and Black Myth Wukong, Helldivers had the more difficult job of actually retaining these players, and despite some grievances the player base has had, there is still a more than healthy player base for this game, one which, sadly, I can't be a part of. I played this one pretty recently, around October, so I completely missed the wave of hype surrounding it, which is actually quite disappointing, but even still, after numerous updates, there wasn't enough to keep me hooked for long. I know that playing with my friends who had already unlocked everything and had been playing for hundreds of hours probably didn't help Helldivers from feeling novel for me at all. Already I could see everything that I would unlock, how to use it, if it was even useful, and how that in reality I felt that none of it changed the way you play in any meaningful way, or how you approach the objectives. Sure, I had Bomb 1 and Bomb 2, but either way I'm still bombing the same camp and then moving to the next thing I have to destroy. Admittedly, there is a lot of variance in gunplay, almost shockingly so, with the array of heavy fire, energy weapons, and a plethora of weapons within each weapon type. I just didn't feel any sort of emotion from killing the same 5 types of enemies, using a bomb, and then moving on. It felt as if I'd played everything the game had to offer within the first few hours, and yeah, the process was sped up due to how exposed I was to the game from my friends, but it would have happened at some point anyway. I know the game isn't trying to reach for more, that there is beauty in the sarcastic motif of the game of doing the same thing over and over again, and while sure, the game gives you options on how to do that thing, when I don't adore doing that thing, I can get tired of it pretty quickly. Look, I know that was kind of a damning critique, and truly, if I played this on my own, this game would rank maybe a bit low on the list, but like, friends do what friends do, and god, did we have some laughs playing this. Friendly fire is basically why I like the game more than the other games I've played on this list so far. Playing late into the night, fooling around, and killing each other repeatedly in the stupidest ways was something I haven't found many games have done recently. And if you scroll through my media gallery, it is just entirely stupid Helldivers clips, because even though the objectives of the game bored me out of my mind, there was always something funny and stupid happening to keep me engaged just a bit longer. And while I certainly don't plan on keeping Helldivers in my long-term rotation of games, Arrowhead need to be commended for making a live service game that is not only fun, but also feels like a breath of fresh air in so many ways in the current live service game market. The success of this game deserves widespread celebration, absolutely, and I love the game for what it's achieved, but for now I am not one of its most outspoken fanatics. Speaking of friends, me and the Clout Gang tore up some great multiplayer games this year, but sadly content warning fell behind the others a little bit. The fundamentals of the game are just like excellent. I loved the wacky physics, how I felt like I was riding a jackhammer when I was walking anywhere, the depressive grey atmosphere making you feel like you were really in the creepy underbelly of the world. The proximity chat was so good that it genuinely felt like you were walking next to your friends. Like, it was crazy. The echo is amazing. And of course, sitting on the sofa with everyone watching a blurry montage of screaming when no one really knew what was going on, unless it was the guy who was good with the camera that filmed it. And hey, the monster design of this game was stellar, both in terms of how they look, but also more importantly how they play out. Like, a giant territorial ghost slug who eats you and takes you to the other side of the map is genius design. Like, when this happened towards the beginning and we didn't know the layout of the maps, it was actually terrifying. You have the grapple gun dude too, he's a classic, and the Southampton local. The only reason we bounced off this game quicker is because we played it around launch when there wasn't as much replayability. I don't really know how it fares in terms of content now. I mean, when I went back to get footage for this video, there was a creepy hand accordion guy who made weird noises, but we definitely got a couple weeks kick out of it. Bright Memory Infinite is special in the fact that it's the most unique shooter I played in a very long time. It's not unique because it has some quirky gimmick or revolutionary game system, but it's unique in the fact that it's just really stupid. In a good way. It's so out there in terms of the scenario the story takes place in, the powers that Shelia, the main character, has, and the amount of hilarious and game-breaking bugs that take you out of immersion every 10 or so minutes. I cover a lot of this in my most recent video of the game, but Bright Memory Infinite is as much comedy as it is a genuinely tightly made shooter. The gunplay feels excellent, from rifle to shotgun to sniper. The swordplay is flashy and fast, not that there is any depth to it. The only thing holding this game back, because believe me, the bugs make it twice as good, is the fact that it's just so short. It took me about an hour and a half to get all the achievements, so we might be looking at a runtime of only about an hour for the main story. I really wish this game had more budget so that it could have been longer, but for what's here, it's a really fun time and a nice little memory amongst the longer behemoths I played this year. If you want to hear more about how good this game is, I've linked my video in the description. Inscryption is the perfect game to play in the dark, in bed, late at night. It's a weird one not only to describe for me, but also to rank. I can say with confidence that I enjoyed the game less and less as it went on. Like, I found the start of the game absolutely enthralling in terms of card game design, in terms of atmosphere, world building. I loved losing a run and playing all of it again and gradually unlocking more of the mystery. You've seen the clips of Leshy sitting across from the table. It is really unsettling, like more unsettling than you would think. And the development of each of the characters throughout the game, I don't want to spoil it, even though I put a warning at the start of the video just in case, so I'm trying to be vague on purpose, but Inscryption is definitely worth experiencing, if only to make Ouroboros stupid powerful. The atmosphere never gets dull, and I think that's why I took to it so much. The game changes so much but stays consistently off-putting, just in different ways. Honestly, I would go out and buy this one full price, but if it ever goes on sale, make sure to grab it. If you've ever heard anything about this game, it's that there isn't anything else like it, so play it just to find out. Horizon is another weird one to rank. There are many parts about it that I enjoy, but many parts of it make me want to try painting rocks grey and see if that's any more interesting. Horizon is really lucky that the combat is such a delight for an open world game, and that Aloy is easy to grow fond of, because the story sadly does not keep me there at all. I often found myself skipping through dialogue that wasn't related to the main story, just so I could be free of all the monotonous conversation and get to moving Aloy around again. I realise that this is definitely a me problem, but I constantly felt myself dashing through the game game, running straight through areas, beelining it to the tall necks and not exploring after. But deep within it all, somehow I loved collecting things. I loved completing the quests, entering a new biome that looked completely different from all the others, using all the different equipment and clearing every camp I came across. Because attempting to beat them using stealth gave me a thrill far above anything lower on the list. For some reason. At heart, I am a sucker for Ubisoft style open worlds. Sometimes I just need them, and at the time I needed this game. I wouldn't recommend it above some of the previous entries because it is likely that you've experienced the general essence of this game before, but if you crave open worlds and a world atmosphere which generally trumps many other games, then I would recommend at least a try. I can't say I'm rushing to play the sequel, but if I had to describe my time with it, it would be that the world felt like a substantial experience surrounding a less substantial story. I would love to get a deep dive into this world, with the politics and the drama through a media adaptation, something akin to how Cyberpunk Edgerunners expanded the world of Cyberpunk threefold, because Guerrilla have got something special here. Now, I grew up consuming a lot of Five Nights at Freddy's content from all across YouTube, from simple Let's Plays in the beginning to watching challenge runs and analyses of the game. I'm far from knowledgeable, like at all, but this is one of those franchises like Pokemon or Mario Odyssey that I get super hyper-focused on for a couple of weeks, maybe once or twice a year. Five Nights at Freddy's in particular takes to me so well because of the thrill of horror. It's tame enough to where, as a complete wuss, I can handle watching it if I have jumpscare timestamps. But it's not so scary that I get completely turned off, especially once you know more about the games and generally know what's about to happen and when. And that's where Security Breach comes in. Its scares are extremely controlled, barring a few scripted jump scares here and there. I know many fans aren't as fond of this game compared to the other games in the series, but it feels like this game is tailor-made to just be manageable enough to where I don't have a heart attack. I really love the thrill of horror, but I love it even more when I have control over it and my heart rate. Which is why, despite the gameplay generally being nothing special, I fell in love with this game. Sneaking around the Pizzaplex, knowing exactly where the animatronics are, basking in the overwhelmingly eerie and almost liminal feeling spaces, and being able to surrender and kill myself if the animatronics ever found me was something I took great pleasure in. I love the fact that we are running around an abandoned mall. I don't have any other way to describe it other than the fact that it just feels right in my heart. It adds a sparkle to the horror that I so desperately enjoyed. Maybe because it pandered to my childhood fantasies because I felt so small in an area so unknown yet so cozy. Or maybe it was because it was mostly well lit and I had enough spatial awareness to prep my nerves for whatever was coming. I did love my time with the world of this game, the animatronic mechanics and the scripted sequences throughout it. I did fall off it a bit towards the end because as much as I loved the experience, it still did find me a bit, and perhaps on a similar theme to Unpacking, I could only handle smaller size sessions at once, otherwise I would have been very burnt out on the game very quickly. Because as fun as the suspense of the game is for me, it is a little bit of a walking simulator, so in a weird way, for my taste, this game is sort of a tech demo for horror, showing the ways in which it can be targeted to be so appealing to me, but lacking the means in which to keep me engaged more than the games higher than this one on the list. Right, it's at this point that we're getting to the really good stuff, the stuff that I truly delighted in playing this year, the stuff that I don't have anything all too negative to say. Persona 4 dancing is an absolute treat for anyone who's played and loved Persona 4. Okay, that is probably a really obvious thing to say, but you are not ready for how good this is in terms of how it delivers a story which is not only incredibly engaging, but spreads an unbelievable number of good messages for a game which lasts probably only a quarter of the time that the original does. I was so shocked to find not only a story which genuinely resonates with me, perhaps by even more than the actual Persona 4, but I was also shocked by how happy this game made me. I really love this group of characters with all my heart, and getting to share another deep adventure with them, one that I didn't even know I'd be getting when I bought this game, was like waking up on Christmas morning and finding 5 copies of Balan Wonderworld under the tree. Like, what even is better than that? Each new character in the game is also such a treat. They were all clearly designed around sharing one clear, thought out positive sentiment, and the progression of each character and idea throughout the story and how each problem is resolved is done with the same love and attention to detail that we come to expect from Atlas. I won't go into too much detail on the story because I'm probably going to make a video on this game at some point, but the game is worth playing for the story alone. It just so happens, right, that there is a little side mode where you play music and rhythm game and stuff. I don't know. Again, I could talk for a very long time about how good and emotionally connected I felt to these songs while playing through them. I'll get around to fully explaining that someday, just because I really need to show you all of the special moments that this game has in wait for you. Okay, I realised I just became the Glaze King, so it might be confusing to understand how there are 10 games in front of Persona 4 Dancing, especially this shitty ass looking Steam game. Well, okay, not literally shitty ass, because look at this is just like the most beautiful thing you've ever seen, right? But let me tell you about this, because this Backrooms game is actually a really special one. Okay. Backrooms escape together. So, horror, suspense, I'm an addict, I love the Backrooms vibe, blah, 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 blah. Yes, once again, I could yap about that all day. But a game really leaves a mark on you when you finish it in one sitting. Backrooms Escape Together is a Backrooms game, which, as you can tell, you can play with a friend. Now, me and such friends were nearing the end of a session one afternoon. We'd probably played for at least 6 hours, and we were quickly checking if we had anything else to buy when we came across this game, and the Steam page hooked its claws into us immediately just because it looked so good, so photorealistic, that I was completely convinced it was fake. Because, you know, I've seen a few of those going around, but it was definitely not fake. Even on my busted laptop that can't run most games, it looked like incredible. I don't know how it did. The lighting was amazing, the fidelity was amazing, and I had proximity chat, so me and this friend completed it in one sitting, playing way up until the early hours of the morning. This game was one of my favourite experiences of the year. I still hold that night close to my heart. The levels are gripping, even though you could be fooled into thinking that these environments are just for show. I mean, they're not particularly complicated or even very long, but running through them, hiding from monsters, running from them in the final level, that one was really fun. We had to communicate so much to get that one finished. Literally, like, the other guy had to kill himself so that we could win. And just slowly exploring this profoundly beautiful place in the dead of night with no idea what we were doing is an experience I would absolutely recommend to anyone. You definitely should not miss this. Lethal Company! What a classic! You can tell I've really been on a scary game binge this year, and we still have some coming up later too. I mean, like, what even is there to say about this game? Any game which combines my love for absolutely lukewarm horror, proximity chat, and my mild affection towards my friends wins me over pretty quick. At some point, it became less horror and more of a strategic multiplayer game with a lot of funny moments thrown in. Seriously, this is a very funny game. I'm sure you've seen a compilation or two, but if I'd recorded every time we played this, then I could probably add another 3 or 4 montages to the mix. This game is a real laugh when you have everyone together, as you all get ravaged by dogs and fucking Winston Overwatch as the Bracken to jump scare you. Sadly, this never happened to me, but I watched it happen. It was gold. There really was endless fun for us this year with this game. From the base game, with its frequent updates and intriguing monster design, to the plethora of engaging mods, we had just about as much fun with the mods as the base game itself, constantly installing stupid shit and extra interesting things, which really made my time with Lethal Company memorable. It's not a game I'm just going to dump either. Sure, I'm not playing it that much nowadays, but it'll always remain a staple of our game nights. I'm just waiting for a night where I have a nightmare about being inside the facility, because I don't think I will ever be the same person after that. What a vibe, man. You just know I had to hit him with the horror three-peat. A Resident Evil 4 Remake is another game I might make a video on, so I'll try to keep this brief, but essentially this was the first horror game I played this year. I played it first this year, hoping that because I knew it was as much of an action game as it was a horror game, I could ease myself into the genre a bit and experience a phenomenal game while I was at it, since I hadn't ever played the original. The problem is, well, it's not really a problem, but I severely overestimated how scared I would be of this game. I might have just been lucky, and I'm not bragging when I say this, because I am still a wuss, like I said earlier, just slightly less of one now, but I got scared maybe once throughout this whole game, and that was in the section with the first regenerator you find, because the tension of knowing something was about to attack me, but having no idea what it was, well, in the dimly lit Frankenstein's lab of the island, did scare me for all of about a minute, before I just ran away from the thing when it came out to get me and didn't really care. What I did take from this game though is that the action of this game is simply divine. It feels so good to play as Leon that in parts, okay, don't kill me when I say this, It felt like I was playing one of the new God of Wars. That is to say, in terms of how fluid it felt to control Leon, the linear structure of the game, the design of the semi-open world, and the grand action set pieces that showed up so many times I couldn't even begin to count. It's one of those ones that grips me the whole way through, because it was such a joy to get to the next section and the next one, because there was always something new and exciting happening, while the expertly crafted melee and gun fundamentals of the game stayed rock solid underneath all the buzz. I can only assume through what I've been told that this is one of the finest quality remakes ever made, and as someone experiencing it for the first time, I'm not surprised in the slightest. I've already talked in depth about Wild Hearts, so if you want to find out why I truly loved this game this year, then you can watch my video on it with the link below. Long story short, as a monster hunting game, I find it to succeed in many areas where Monster Hunter itself fails to keep my engagement high. This mostly stems from the incredible combat, where with the right weapons, my favourite being the Bladed Wagasa, a type of weapon specialising in aerial combat and parry timings, the combat opens up to a whole level of fun and style of fighting unheard of in Monster Hunter. And it feels like a strange but incredibly satisfying combination of games like Bayonetta, Dark Souls, and Monster Hunter itself, obviously. And while the difficulty is definitely poorly tuned in some encounters, maybe a bit more towards the end, overall I found that Wild Hearts kept me engaged where Monster Hunter couldn't, and has become a dark horse contender for the most underrated game of last year. Granblue Fantasy Relink is a funny game because it also borrows a lot from Monster Hunter, as the progression model is pretty much identical, where you embark on short instance quests and use materials gained from defeating enemies to upgrade your weapons. It's a really good time, and it leans into the fast action RPG combat with great success. The difference with this game is that there are fewer characters, maybe around 20, which is still a good amount considering how much detail goes into all of them, and they all play very differently. I played most of the story as Rosetta, who can lay down sort of trap turret hybrids in the form of plant buds, and she can attack using vines from a safe distance. After I switched to another character, who is a bit of a spoiler, despite the story not being that great. It's much lower quality compared to other JRPGs. And then finally I shook it up a bit and played multiple at once as soon as the game properly allowed me to level up characters more easily in the late game. I mean, there's a character for anyone, and the combat feels so deliciously smooth, partly because the pace is super fast, but also because, like, look at this game, man. It's got to be the most beautiful cell shading ever. While there isn't a whole lot to explore to look at the cell shading, because it's not exactly a typical JRPG, what we do have is jaw-droppingly gorgeous. Especially the two towns included in the game. They're surprisingly big for a JRPG too. I mean, there's nothing to do in them, but I don't care. Look at how serene they are. I just want to live in them. Completing a mission with the satisfying and meaningful progression, and coming back here to relax and tweak my builds was genuinely a delight this year. The only complaint I would have is how grindy it gets towards the end of the game, not in the story, but in the lengthy post-game after. I would really urge anyone with even a passing interest to try this one out, because it takes so many good things from so many different games, and somehow manages to combine them into something that kept me smiling for weeks. This one came out pretty early in the year, and it was criminally overlooked, so go on, go give it a play. God, that song is so good. This placement might actually be a bit surprising for some of you. I mean, top 5's good. Yeah, it's good, but, you know, I didn't put it number 1, but that doesn't speak to the quality of this game at all. It is amazing. When Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree released, I, along with many other people, felt the feeling of monumental, foreboding curiosity induced in us 2 years ago for a second time. Nothing really compares to this feeling, the feeling of exploring, waiting to find a new area and have it shatter all of your expectations of what FromSoft can do. The feeling of searching far and wide for the next Remembrance boss, wondering what it might be, if it'll be one from the trailers, or a new one entirely. One of my favourite memories from the game is clearing most of the bosses, but still wondering where Mr. was, and if he was a boss at all. He became this legendary figure from the trailer in my mind. I didn't know who he was, or where he was, but he was out there somewhere, in this world that I barely even knew. I did find the Abyssal Woods eventually, and I knew that he was there the moment I got there. If I erase my memories of the actual area, arriving at Midra's Manse and seeing him just sitting there in his arena when I was only halfway through the area and across the room gave me chills to the bone. This is where I believe FromSoft shines above all other game makers. Not just the sense of discovery, but the sense of foreboding discovery, and I loved every second of trying to discover each monumental moment in this DLC. The highs of this DLC definitely outshone those of the base game, and it's not even particularly close. It wasn't perfect, the areas felt empty in places, so exploration, once you knew there wasn't a new area or huge boss around the corner, felt redundant, as the spaces weren't filled with the usual activities of the base game quite so well. It's definitely not a deal breaker, as these environments are infinitely more intriguing to look at, and the emotional payoff of finding the bigger areas, defeating the hardest bosses, was well worth trekking on that bloody red place for no reason. This game makes me sad because that sense of foreboding discovery isn't ever going to be recreated by another game or studio, because it will take decades for any piece of media to evolve enough where playing the next installment feels as monumental as Shadow of the Erdtree does. And furthermore, in the future, no other piece of media is ever going to come out at the same time as Brat came out, and while probably being the album of the year, no game will ever burn into my brain the memory of listening to Brat while exploring the ancient ruins of Raoul. Green and Green, you know, they go hand in hand, and bopping the fuck out to that album while exploring this place, it was magical, and to be honest, it is a crime that this will never happen again, and that should be taken into consideration by the government moving forward. I can confidently say that Phasmophobia is the most fun I've had playing a multiplayer game in at least 3 years. The premise is so simple, yet it plays so remarkably. You and 3 others enter a location, be that a house, a campground, or even a psychiatric ward, and do various tests to figure out what type of ghost haunts the area you're in, while trying not to have it kill you at the same time. We bought it as soon as it came to consoles near Halloween, and it's like every horror game on our list so far has been slowly building up to me playing this at the end of the year. You have the parts of the game which are more controlled, like being able to lay a crucifix on the ground to protect yourself from most hunts, and the ability to burn an incense during a hunt to protect yourself once again. You have the tension, the knowledge that even though you can protect yourself if you play right, sometimes it may not work, like the ghost starting a hunt outside the range of your crucifix if you lay it down in a bad location, or if the ghost happens to be that one type that doesn't really care about the crucifixes, or if your friend decides to fuck you up and start a cursed hunt. There are so many intricacies to figuring out which ghost is haunting you, so many things you can test, so many ways to use critical thinking and use your knowledge of the game to win crucial matches. It's terrifying. Even if the scare has worn off on me quite a lot since I've been playing, you still get surprise moments where the ghost starts an event and chases you seemingly out of nowhere. But it's those tense moments, the moments where you and your friends are hiding in a closet somewhere, hearing the ghost thud beyond the walls as it searches for you. Those moments where someone suddenly isn't answering the radio anymore. Those moments where you're about to leave and yet the front door closes on you. That one sucks. And you know you're about to have a thrill that no other game could possibly provide you as you begin your escape. It's the kind of horror I find really intriguing, with suspense littered throughout. No cheap tricks or jump scares. If the ghost kills you, nothing crazy happened, it just sticks its fingers up your nose. There isn't a huge debilitating emotional cost behind every encounter, it's just more of like a fun thrill. There's so much suspense. I wasn't afraid of being caught, and I loved that feeling. It just made for really good moments when you did die for the others. Seeing my friends run in from another room screaming, then collapsing in a crumpled heap in front of me was the shit. Somehow I have even more funny clips from this game than I do from even Helldivers, and that is really impressive on its own. I do need to make a video about this game so that I can go into detail about how magnificent this experience truly is, because like, it's hurting me that I actually can't yap about this game for another hour. I barely covered anything either, especially about how fun the social elements of this game are, but one day I will, so you'll have to tune in. We're getting to the point of the list where it's becoming difficult to condense my love for these games into such a small segment. Like, Metaphor ReFantazio, under a certain lens, is the most monumental game that's been made in the last 2 decades at least. I'd love to try explain why in my own words someday, but I'm sure you know why already, and there are probably plenty of people working on a revolutionary deep dive of this game as we speak. When they start coming out, I implore you to watch them, because this is a message in the guise of a game. It just so happens that Atlas are Atlas, and can make a game run the message which might possibly be the best thing to come out this year. Everything about Metaphor is flawless. Aside from a few gameplay issues I have, none that stem from any faults of the game, but stem from how I like my JRPGs served to me. But to even begin describing each of the ways this game is so important would be a disservice to it in the short time that I have. As a game, it is third in what I enjoyed the most this year, but as a necessary experience, it has to be number one. All I can say is, everything that makes Persona great is expanded upon, which is already high praise, and even though Persona has been making social commentary for ages now, Metaphor, especially at this time of year, feels like it makes a statement so important for the gaming industry, and by extension the world to understand, that is simply a must play if you have any sense at all. Okay, so let me explain why Funny Robot Game is higher up than a game as monumentally important as Metaphor is. While my love for JRPGs is great, possibly the only genre of game that could rival them for me is a good 3D platformer. And damn, if this isn't the best one since Mario Odyssey 7 years ago. Once again, being at the top of the list, it's going to be difficult for me to find the words to express how good of a game Astro Bot is in such a short space of time. I do think the best way to describe this game is it literally just is the personification of the word fun. Every level is so completely packed with so many different fun little quirks, things to interact with, things to look at. And Team Asobi perfected the just one more level feeling in this one so that you can't stop being caught up in the current until you sit there and realize you finished the game in just a couple days. There are so many collectibles to find in each level. Scouring every corner of all of them was something I really looked forward to, because I would enjoy being in these levels and environments so much. It's not like I even have any nostalgia for PlayStation at all. I grew up on the other two platforms, so it's not like I was finding the bots just so I could see who was in the game, although the Persona ones were pretty cool. I hope you saw my video ranking the levels in this game, because that's literally how I can show you how good this game is. It's the little moments in each level, the moments where you stop and you realize how good everything around you looks and feels, where you realize how rare of a game this is. The variance between each level is crazy as well. You have the longer levels, usually focusing around one power-up and pushing it in creative ways. Then you have the medium-sized levels, which are shorter with fewer collectibles and some reused environments, but which are just as fun. And then you have the little speedrun levels, which do provide more challenge, but not a crazy amount. At the time of writing, I haven't tried any of the speedrun levels added through the updates, but I'm sure they're not going to be all that difficult either. Coming back to the larger levels for a second, there are some levels, which are my favourites in the game, in which the spaces in them open up vastly, creating a mini open world where most, if not all of the collectibles lie. There is a water level which I found stood out to me a lot, which did this really well, and created a whole cozy, compact little adventure all within just a small underwater area. The only way I can really show you how good this game is by showing you all the specific examples of where this game shines. If you're looking for that, I made a video on it below, and if you're hesitant on spending full price money for a 10-hour game, please don't be, have more fun with it.